This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene at the end of each episode, or join us for our monthly movie club Zoom call where we discuss a film together, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
I won't even keep that in. That was just for us.
Oh, thank you.
I'm blue, dabba dee dabba die. I am white, also red, dabba dee dabba die. Thought about that on the bus.
Very good. Did you ever think that the lyrics were "I am blue, if I was green, I would die"? Because I've seen people say that they think that.
It's not that they think that, it's that they know that. They're like, these are actually the lyrics, and they're not.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's just a fucking...
Frankly, I wish they were. I would love for them to be "If I was green, I would die."
Oh, that'd be stupid as hell.
Why? What? Better than dabba dee dabba die?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Well, anyway, hey, let us know your thoughts down in the comment of this very high energy episode for one of the probably the least high energy franchises we've covered in a while, in a good way, in a classy film.
Yeah, very upmarket kind of way.
Yeah. This is, of course, the Cult Popture podcast. My name is AJ. I'm joined with Richard.
What up?
And this is film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast, where every fortnight we watch and discuss a film series. We've been going since June of 2016 doing this, bitch. And
remember how good 2016 was? Remember, like, God, don't you look back on that fondly now?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Anyway, are you done looking back fondly? What are some Suicide Squad? Fantastic Beasts?
What are you saying?
Rogue One?
Just movie-wise?
Yeah.
Well, what are you talking about? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing here? What's your end game of this bit, AJ?
Oh, 2019 now. Okay. Those were the real golden days. The last bastion of civilization. It was 2019. Anyway, this is today. So, okay. I'm too high-strung. I'm too excited. So, pretend, if you're listening to this, ignore the energy we've already established. And instead, pour yourself...
And say bonjour to a new energy.
Yeah. Pour yourself a glass of wine. What's a type of wine?
What kind of wine?
Sauvignon Blanc.
A champagne.
A champagne.
And it has to actually be champagne.
Yeah.
Found in the Champagne region of France.
Very nice. And maybe a cigarette. Sit out on the balcony overlooking the little township that you're staying in for one magical summer. And get ready to talk with us about the Three Colors Trilogy, or the Trois Couleurs Trilogy. Or in Polish...
Spoken like a man who's Googled how to pronounce...
I know how to pronounce three colours in French. Trois couleurs, or in Polish, it's trzy kolory, which is significantly less relaxing, I think. But these are a collective of French-Polish films directed by Krzysztof Kieslowski. Pretty sure that's it. Who is a Polish filmmaker, and the films are called they're called Three Colors Blue, Three Colors White, and Three Colors Red, or Trois Couleurs Bleues, Trois Couleurs Blancs, and Trois Couleurs Rouges.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.
I'm loving this.
The series is one of our rare trilogies, Richard, where it's more like a series of spiritual sequels.
Or is it?
Where it's less about the story or characters continuing on for a new adventure and more about the themes and ideas that are, what's the word? Reoccurring through.
Along the same lines as the Red Curtain trilogy, which... one of our most controversial episodes.
Because is it a trilogy? Yes.
Yep. Yeah, it is also, I was going to say, worth mentioning, the blue, white, and red. Those are the three colours on the French flag.
Correct.
Hence why it's It's called that.
Yep, they're the colours on the French flag, and they intended to thematically explore the French ideals that Kieslowski incorrectly believed each colour represented. So, what he thought was that blue, white, and red represented liberty, equality, and fraternity, respectively. He got them confused with the three virtues of the political ideals of the French Republic, and not specifically the flag, which I don't know if I didn't look up if they represented anything. But
yeah, well, the liberté, égalité, and fraternité is the motto of France.
Correct.
Liberty, equality, fraternity.
Yeah. So blue is liberty, white is equality, and red is fraternity, and we'll discuss more about what those three words mean later on. Three words which you go, yeah, I know what they mean, and then someone goes, what do they mean? And you use another word to describe what they mean instead. So we'll get to that. But first, Richard, so these films came out in 1993 and 1994. So two films actually came out in 1 year. The second two films came out in 94.
Red actually came out the day I turned 1.
Wow, very nice. And Red was nominated at the Academy Awards that year, while the other two were not. But there's a little bit more on that later on. So the first film we watched was Three Colors Blue in 1993, directed, as I said, by Krzysztof Kieslowski. What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm pretty sure these ones all have very close to 100, if not 100.
Yes, it is very close to 100, if not 100. It is 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. 98% of critics thought this was a great movie. And can you tell remind me, what is this movie about?
So, Bleu
Bleu
is about a woman whose name is Julie, played by Godzilla 2014's Juliette Binoche, who's Bryan Cranston's late wife in that film. And so she's married to a famous composer, but then he dies in a car accident, and it's about, so this film is tackles the theme of liberty, but it's about emotional liberation.
Yes.
And so she kind of shuts herself off from the world.
Well, her daughter also dies in the crash. She didn't mention. So that almost seems to be. Well, maybe we can talk about this. She almost seems more shell-shocked by the death of her young daughter than by the death of her husband.
Because she also finds out that her husband was having an affair. It's brought into question several times in the movie, although never explicitly confirmed or denied, that she's actually the great composer. So it's about her kind of rediscovering herself, what else happens?
So
in the film?
it's sort of the journey she goes on is that Patrice, who's her late husband, had an unfinished composition. She's kind of asked to help finish it. Because she's haunted by the unfinished notes throughout the film.
It's this recurring motif in the film is elements of that symphony that was unfinished.
And so she eventually sort of finds closure through finishing the work her late husband started, or possibly she started, whichever. This film was considered by Roger Ebert to be an anti-tragedy. He has a cute little way of looking at each film, so that's how he looks at this one, as an anti-tragedy. And I kind of get that, because it's a film which starts with the worst thing that can happen to a person, and then it kind of then goes, all right, so what would you do? And it's like, I would do the same thing. Because she leaves her life behind. She avoids people she knows to try and live a life of freedom, and it is liberation, right? It's liberation from her husband who maybe didn't treat her well, or just an embracing of the clean slate you've now been afforded,
and finally feeling free to be yourself,
Yeah. So I said before that liberty is a word that you kind of need to describe with another word, and that other word I would pick would be freedom. It's a story about embracing the freedom that you've gained, but at what cost?
By losing your husband.
Yeah.
Should we see what Google's definition of
please?
liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. The other definition is the power or scope to act as one pleases.
That's exactly what the film is. And of course, it's called Blue. Why is it called Blue? Because the color blue serves as quite a prominent motif throughout the film. One of the only she sells her husband's estate, and the only thing she keeps is like this mobile made from blue jewels that reminds her of her daughter, that sort of thing, yada yada yada. Richard, what did you think of this film?
Now, these films are all in the Criterion Collection,
correct,
which tends to what's the word, like log and kind of preserve. Like some of the greatest films like The Rock and Armageddon and Son of Godzilla. But it does tend to, preserve, like there's a reason why these films are preserved.
Culturally significant films.
Yeah. Mike Noyes has a podcast about this called Random Acts of Cinema, and they have a thing where they talk about the Criterion moment, which is because they watch randomly selected Criterion films, and this film I thought was like full of Criterion moments.
Sure,
like the film is nothing but Criterion moments of movies where you're like, well, this is why it's in there. And I thought this film was beautiful. I loved it. I thought it was incredible. It's in my top 3 French films in the Criterion Collection where the final shot is one of the main characters crying.
The other two being the other 2 films in this series?
No, not Red, because it doesn't actually end with her crying. She just looks very sad. White does, but also Portrait of a Lady on Fire ends with that.
Right.
Which is, oh my god, what a fucking good movie. I ended up, falling in love with the character of Julie, and Juliette Binoche's performance.
Yeah.
It's I thought it was incredible. What did you think?
Yeah, man. Look, we are rarely afforded the opportunity on this podcast we started because we love film to talk about the reasons why we love film. And this is a great example. Like, we get so stooped in covering Air Bud movies and Land Before Time movies, or even ones that just haven't aged well, like James Bond. And it's like, it's like, why did I do this again? Why did I start a podcast about movies? Oh, it's because movies like Three Colors Bleh exist, Can make you feel things. Exactly. And it's one of those movies where it ends and you maybe haven't made up your mind about it, and then you just don't stop thinking about it for the next day, and it creeps up on you, and like knowing it was about liberty, I think beforehand, like helped me enjoy it more, because we maybe have talked about this a few times, but I certainly enjoy a movie a lot more when I understand what is trying to be communicated. I don't really like open for interpretation to like a massive degree, and so knowing it was about liberty, I could read it through that lens, and I was like, again, like you, I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the liberation of her. I think that one of the things I really liked about this one was the use of music. Like I said before, that it kind of haunts her. It'll play, and it's this grandiose choir that sings and then abruptly stops several times throughout the film. And then when there's a scene where her and the kind of new love interest of the story are looking over the unfinished symphony, and you hear her the camera focuses on her like lining her finger across the notes, and you hear it, and then she goes, no, take out the horns, and you hear it again without the horns, and no, leave this, take out that, put in this, and you hear it play, and it's a very more so than the other 2. I think it really had this spirit to it because of the music in it, that it was like, this is an element to it. Yeah, for sure. Like there was a very, and because I think you're the same, but this is very much a me thing as well. But like I'm so fascinated by music theory because I do not understand it. Yeah. Like the fact that she can listen to that and go, oh, take out the horn, like play that in her mind and say take out the horns, is like,
it's like speaking another language.
Yeah.
She is speaking another language. But so it's just another layer on top of that. But yeah, and so the music gives it this kind of mystical quality because there's an inherent like emotional kind of tie to music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, the films have sort of been famously lauded as like they are politically inspired but apolitical in and of themselves. So they're inspired by a political motto, but they themselves are universal messages no matter where you sit in politics. And I think what's really cool about that is like it doesn't just say, oh, if your whole family dies, you can run away and start anew. It's like it says it still provides her with a way to receive closure and move on. I hope people enjoy us being very serious talking about film instead of being silly like we usually are, because I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this conversation. I just hope it's what people want to hear. Do people like when we enjoy films, or do they prefer it when we're miserable? It feels like they prefer it when we're miserable.
Well, I mean, they're not like happy films
That's true.
necessarily. Yeah,
they're quite harrowing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, did you notice one technique used in this film that's very strange is that it'll be a close-up of Julie, and then you'll hear the like few bars from the unfinished symphony play, and then the screen will fade to black for a few moments and then fade back in, but you're just in the same scene like nothing has changed.
Yeah.
What did you think was going on there?
It's a very like being like overcome with emotion kind of thing.
Because they have kind of the energy of ad breaks, and we wondered if this was actually a made-for-TV movie originally, which wouldn't surprise me because things like The Girl and the Dragon Tattoo, the Swedish versions, they were actually originally made as made-for-TV movies, and these share quite a lot of similarities with two films came out in the same year. The female-driven character pieces, that sort of thing. But the only thing that wouldn't make sense for an ad break is the fact that they come up in the same scene and then the scene immediately ends a couple of times. Yeah. So this does have a quote from Kieslowski about it. He says, this is, when asked about the fade-ins and fade-outs, he said, at a certain moment, time really does pass for Julie, while at the same time it stands still. Not only does her music come back to haunt her at a certain point, but time stands still for a moment. And there's several quotes.
Yeah, it felt like haunting for me. That's the right kind of word. That it's like she is being, and maybe it's that she's like haunted by the sense of liberty that she feels,
maybe,
because from losing her husband.
Yeah, a couple of other, you see this written everywhere because people are like, "What is happening with the fade-ins and fade-outs?" And it's supposed to represent an extremely subjective point of view from the filmmaking,
right?
Which is very, you don't hear that a lot outside of film school crowds these days. So, so yeah, man, I really love this. This really stayed with me. I think out of all the three, it feels like it's the most stylistic as well, which
for sure,
I really liked. Before we move on, or do you have anything else you want to talk about with Blue?
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to give us some dumb IMDb trivia, get the sillies back into this podcast. So if you don't know, IMDb trivia is user submitted, meaning that it can range from anything to anything. And often it's really silly. Here is a couple of pieces of IMDb trivia I found for Three Colors Blue. At the 2018 Vice Grad Film Forum, cinematographer Slawomir Idziak claimed that the script and initial cut for this film focused on the journalist character, played by Helene Vincent, and her efforts to investigate the authorship of the unfinished musical composition that drives the plot. It was only during the editing process that Krzysztof Kieslowski restructured the film to focus on Julie. Now, that is an insane piece of trivia. I included it in dumb IMDb trivia because I was like, that's not true. Not maybe in the scripting stage, but in the editing stage, you changed it from the entire hero of the film.
Well, Annie Hall was a linear murder mystery, apparently. until it became and like literally it was shot like that.
Wow.
And it was going to be like more than 2 hours long. And then it was recut into a 90-minute romantic comedy with showcasing a non-linear kind of style.
Interesting.
And also, and then there's like The Thin Blue Line is another example.
Right, but
Thin Red Line.
Helene,
the Terrence Malick film.
Right, Helene Vincent is in her journalist character is in the film for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
She's hardly in it. So I like this is claimed by the cinematographer. And Kieslowski sadly is no longer with us, so we don't have him to confirm nor deny that. But if that's true, this is a feat. They changed the story completely. So that's pretty interesting. Another piece of dumb IMDb trivia I have here is, so there's a famous shot in this where after she leaves her house, or the estate that she's just asked to sell everything in it, she like puts her knuckles up against a stone wall and just drags them across the stone wall and like cuts up her hand real bad. It's quite grisly. And it says here on IMDb, for the shot where Julie scrapes her hand along a stone wall, Juliette Binoche was originally supposed to wear a prosthetic to protect her hand, but it looked too obvious on camera. Binoche felt the scene was important enough that she actually dragged her unprotected hand along the wall, drawing real blood. She claims it took over a year for her hand to heal completely. Richard, she kept acting. She kept acting. This is what am I referencing? There's what movie? Django Unchained?
Django Unchained, where Leonardo DiCaprio smashes his hand on the table and accidentally crushed a glass with his hand, impaling his hand with blood, with glass, bleeding everywhere, and he keeps acting and he pulls the blood out, and it's like one of those things that it's one of those things that became a meme because people were like, oh my god, this was so amazing. And people were like, this is so amazing, and like made fun of people who found it amazing.
Acting like it's always in bold. It's like he kept acting. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, let's move on to Trois Couleurs Blanc in 1994, Three Colors White, also directed by Krzysztof Kieslowski. And what do you reckon this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
98.
This has 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's the lowest rated of the three. Wow. And when the lowest rated of your trilogy is 87, you're doing something right.
87 is not... We don't see numbers that high very often.
What is Three Colors White about?
All right, so there's our main character, Carol.
Carol, yep. That's his first name and his surname.
The film opens with him, his wife divorcing him, because Dominique, his wife, played by the before trilogies and Age of Ultron's Julie Delpy,
portrayed by an American werewolf in Paris's Julie Delpy.
Yes,
the film we've covered. Well, I guess we've covered Age of Ultron as well, but yeah, she's in that we've covered on the podcast as well.
And yes, that he can't get it up, and so he's unable to. He can't achieve an erection with his penis, is what I mean.
Oh,
and so unable to consummate their marriage, and so she divorces him. And so it's one of those like really, really down on his luck kind of guys. Like the opening act of the film is just everything going wrong for him until he meets and befriends Mikolaj, who essentially says, "I can take you to Poland in a suitcase." So he hides in a suitcase, but then the suitcase is stolen.
Yeah,
and so he, but then through
it's a black comedy of errors, basically.
It is, yeah. But then finally getting some kind of good fortune. What is it? He essentially extorts his bosses.
Yeah.
And is able to play that to his advantage, and then becomes a bit of a success, and then fakes his death to essentially prove that Dominique still loved him, or to have her come to the funeral and then frame her for his death. He manages to have sex with her, and she orgasms wildly. So they have sex, and then he leaves, and then the cops show up and are like, hey, you killed your husband. And she's like, well, no. And then she ends up in prison, and he not so much visits her, but he stands outside the prison. They make eye contact and they sign to each other. And it's like essentially they're signing, and it's positive that they're going to get back together.
She actually signs. She specifically signed something like, "We're going to get out of here and we're going to get married again." And he's left crying,
and he cries. Which is the final shot of the film. But also, I guess I'll say it here. You probably got it in your notes, but the kind of fun thing at the start of this film is there's in Bleu, there's a scene where Julie finds out about her husband's mistress. And she finds out that she's a lawyer, and she goes to court, and like kind of pushes open a door where she sees her, and is like quickly told, "No, like what are you doing? Get out!" And then in the start of this film, we see her try to walk into the courtroom because the court case that she was about to walk into was the divorce of Carol and Dominique.
Yes.
And so it's a very fun little like,
right at the start, shared universe.
Which also like, because I was like, oh, God, we're doing 3 colors. We're going to have this fucking conversation again about what counts as a franchise. It inexplicably does.
Right,
It's not just themes.
Yeah.
But also I like this thing because, again, like you, I knew that it was like they had the 3 themes of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And I love that this film, it's like it treats equality as like getting equal. It's getting even. It's a revenge film.
It's revenge.
Yeah, and so it's about the idea of like getting even with someone, not being equal. It's like bringing them down. It's a great interpretation of it.
It almost feels like a pre, I don't know. Like now, if you were to tell a story about equality that's about a jilted man getting revenge on the woman who broke his heart, I think maybe you'd have a bit of a different reaction to listening to that as equality. So yeah, it is a sort of a revenge story. Wikipedia states the plot as a deeply ashamed beggar begins his effort to restore equality to his life through revenge. And I get it. I don't think it's particularly. I don't think it's in danger of being sexist because it's like this is like Dominique is portrayed as a very shallow person who divorces her husband for a reason that you probably shouldn't divorce someone for, that they can't.
Well, they should have got married in the first place.
Yeah, that he can't perform. And so it is kind of like a just desserts kind of thing. Roger Ebert called this the anti-comedy. So we've got the anti-tragedy and we've got the anti-comedy. And I think that makes sense because especially that last shot where he's waving at her and they're signing in the prison shows that she still loves him. So it's less like he got revenge and more like they restored equal venom to either side of the relationship.
It's like the Phantom. It's like Phantom Thread a little bit.
It's exactly like Phantom. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, there's a kinkiness to it. There's a
that it's like they're going to keep doing this forever.
Yeah, and that's romantic. That is romantic.
In its own little fucked up way. Yeah, the idea that it's like that she's because he was able to get it up because he was getting revenge, essentially. It was like a hate fuck, I believe is the term.
I believe the kids are calling it.
And I think that there's, if we were to see these characters again, they would be doing this shit. They would be like, because she tries to burn down her, like, is it her shop or where she lives? Because to essentially blame him for it. And they're going to keep one-upping each other and then have this like amazing, passionate sex because they get a rush from doing that to each other.
Hey, and look, Richard, maybe we will see them again sometime in the future.
I doubt it.
So what did you think of 3 colors white?
Blanc. Tres couleurs blanc. I did... Yeah, like the fact that this one has a lower rating, I get that.
Yeah.
And there is, you talked about this last episode, that there's something inherently less interesting about a story driven by revenge, unless for some reason it's The Last of Us 2.
A more complex and layered story that I think is actually a lot more than just a story about revenge. Yep, go on.
But yeah, and also like the fact that it's like the fact that it's a man, I kind of found less interesting. Like
yeah, I thought this was Julie Delpy's movie.
yeah, even though she's not in it for quite a substantial amount of time, but yeah, like I found the French woman in the other two films like with these really, really incredible leads. But there's something, and there's something a bit pathetic about Carol, and it's like my least favorite kind of stretch of episodes, or maybe just one episode is in Breaking Bad, is the one where it's like Jesse's life is just so bad, and it's cringeworthy. Right. It's cringe comedy essentially, and it's like you just want them to catch a break, but then. And it's just sad. But then, like, having said that, I did really like this movie, and the fact that it's like it's a bit more of a comedy I enjoyed, and it's a comedy of errors anyway.
The comedy is sort of what replaces the like musical motif from
for sure.
It's like that's what sets this one apart. What sets the first one apart is that it has these musical elements and kind of a very subjective, as we said, stylistic communication of its story. What sets this one about is that it's easily the only funny one of the three.
Yeah.
But yeah, with like Dominique is in terms, because I wanted to think of these movies as like these three French films where there's like this powerhouse actress in the lead role, whereas in White, it's more like the main female character serves as a symbol for the film. Like she's on the poster but is less the protagonist.
But I also think there's a little bit of neatness of putting her on the poster.
Yeah, well, exactly. But she's the MacGuffin almost of it, Yeah. It's the same with you visit the poster for Les Mis, where it's the little girl.
Yeah,
it's like that.
Yeah, what's her name?
Little girl from Les Mis. I think her name is Les Mis. I think she is Les Mis.
Oh yeah, she's the lame.
Les Mis. There you go. Ah. Very, very nice. Did you have any favourite scenes or things you want
Young Cassette.
Do you have any favourite scenes or things you want to talk about with Three Colors Blanc?
No, there's just a lot of like funny stuff in it, and like the scene where we see Julie show up, I was like, oh yes, nice. Thank you. There's my like Hail Mary. I don't have to talk about what isn't a franchise.
Sweet. Well, I've got some dumb IMDb trivia. Here is one of the craziest pieces of trivia I've ever read, and was very interested to see if it's true. Krzysztof Kieslowski was a very precise filmmaker. During the scene in which Dominique has an orgasm, he told Julie Delpy exactly how long she had to moan and when she had to start to moan louder, because it kind of fades to white on the
because it happens a couple times in the film.
The crescendo of her orgasm. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the climax.
And that do you know what this guy looks like, Krzysztof Kieslowski? He's like a grizzled old Polish man. He's chain smoking in every interview he's in. Died at 53. You imagine this man going up to like this beautiful fair actress like Julie Delpy and being like, so I want you to be like,
it's funny because I wanted to double check the pronunciation of his name, and so I watched a couple of like interviews about him and stuff, and they and there was an interview with Julie Delpy, and she mentions like, they were like, what is it like working with Kieslowski, and she said, oh yeah, like he was very I don't know if she said this, but like a very intimate filmmaker. Like he would get like, he's like right off camera in any scene kind of thing, smoking and telling you what to do. And he said that he would be like looking at his watch and he would be like, hey, and moan and louder. And now I need to scream. And it's like, and he said, and she said that like, and she's like talking about, oh, my character screamed because I guess she was, I don't scream like that.
Well, that's actually a good point. I watched a while ago. I watched sort of a behind the scenes video from an intimacy supervisor on a film set. So these are the people.
Oh, yeah, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, who sit in on sex scenes to make sure nothing untoward is happening on set. And one of the things that I remember they talked about in there was that one of the things they intimacy coach. Sorry, they coach the actors in the love scene is to find your character's animal. So that when you are making your grunts and your moans, that you're actually doing it in character and not revealing to an entire film crew what you sound like, which is quite a private thing potentially. So it's funny that you brought that Krzysztof Kieslowski being right off camera, Richard, because that's actually my second piece of dumb IMDb trivia. More dumb in the way it's worded than the information it contains.
Yeah, very nice.
So here's what it says verbatim. Julie Delpy shared that Krzysztof Kieslowski would sit under the camera and chain smoke because he always sat under the camera. He was a very close proximity to the actors during close-ups. She continued that this was reassuring as he solely focused on his actors, but sometimes it could be distracting. It's just a run-on sentence. That's like, is? You can format this better. So that is Trois Couleurs Blanc, or it's got a Polish name. The Polish names are funnier, so I'm going to read out the Polish names very quickly.
What is it?
Yeah, it's so the one for white is Tricolore Biale. This is offensive. And so so that's for white. For blue, it was Tricolore Niebieski, and for red, it is Tricolore Czerwony. So there's a CZ in there, a CZ combination. Very fun. Okay. Trois Couleurs Rouge, or Three Colors Red, also came out in 1994, directed by Krzysztof Kieslowski. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? I've said Krzysztof Kieslowski so many more times than I was planning to. I think once I worked out how to pronounce it, I was like, I'm going to say this all the way through the episode now.
Yeah. 100%.
It is 100%, so this is the highest rated. Can you tell me what this movie's about?
Yeah, so this is definitely the hardest one because it's a converging storylines kind of thing, which is kind of how Fraternity fits into it. It's these seemingly unconnected characters who form these bonds. So at the center of it, you've got Valentine, who is a model, a part-time model. But you know what? She could be a regular model.
Wow.
She kind of the iconic image of this, I guess, is her. She does a bubblegum campaign, and the image that's chosen of her is just her like looking off into the distance, sad. She driving home one day, runs over a dog, then finds the owner of it, who is a retired judge, and then they kind of form this unlikely bond. And then she's got a boyfriend who's like quite controlling.
You don't actually ever see him though. You only hear him over the phone.
So the judge has like, it's not through tapping phone lines, but he essentially listens, and
it's wavelength. It's radio.
Yeah, it's his radio. He listens in on his neighbors having sex.
Or they're having sex. They're more like
they're sexual phone calls.
Yeah.
His male neighbor's phone call with his male lover.
Yeah. Who he has a family and a daughter, so that's the scandal, I guess.
Yeah. There's another main character
named August.
This was the one I kind of struggled with the most, but at the same time, it's also really stuck with me.
Yeah, so August's story is basically that his life is going real great, and then his girlfriend cheats on him, and that's basically it. That's basically his whole story. It's presented as happening in the same vicinity to Valentine's story, so that the interconnected proto Love Actually style converging storyline nature of it.
Also, so the film kind of builds up to Valentine is moving to England.
Well, I think she's just going on a holiday to see.
Right, she's going on a ferry across the English Channel, and then the ferry ends up capsizing, or a storm hits.
Yeah.
And her friend Kern, the judge, is watching at home, and we see footage, and they tell you that only 7 people have been saved from the ferry. And then the footage on the news shows Julie and Olivier from Blue. Olivier was the new kind of lover. Carol and Dominique from White. Auguste and Valentine.
Yeah, so that's August got on the boat as well. That's only 6 though, so I wonder who the 7th.
They never show you the 7th one, but and then it ends with the same shot that's her ad campaign, and it's her like looking up at the distance, sad. But yeah, it's a very interesting ending. I messaged you when I saw it, and I was like, this will be a talking point, I think. But the way it very, very clearly brings all the characters together, that puts them in the same place, and it's one of those things that's like, it seems very unlikely that they would all be on the same ferry, but
well, so
if 6 people have survived, they all presumably have their own stories, and we've just seen them.
Yeah, it's less like, oh, what a coincidence that all the 3 main characters survive, all the 6 main characters survive from each film, and more like, wow, imagine if you saw the ferry sinking first, and then it went and showed you all these people's lives. Yeah,
and it's like, that's why they're the main characters.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because it implied a lot more about Dominique and Carol's future, because
and Julie and Olivia as well.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, none of those characters were in jail. So there is a biblical kind of divine intervention vibe to this movie specifically. I'd almost say that's the, if White was a comedy and Blue was really subjective, Red kind of has a deus, like there's a godliness to it, because the judge that Dominique befriends has a monologue at one point where he talks about like his heartbreak, and it's eerily similar to what's happening to August, and he also talks about a boat capsizing on the channel, so there's like a time loop and almost a prescient quality to the character. But yeah, so there you go. Roger Ebert called this the anti-romance, which I think is a really cool way to put it, because it has the body of a romance where the 2 leads never meet.
Yeah.
Ever, at any point. And so that is quite anti-romantic. Could be the least romantic thing I've ever heard, Richard, is not meeting someone you could be romantic with.
Yeah.
What did you think of this one?
This one was kind of the hardest one to... Because it isn't as straightforward, and obviously it's another language. There were moments when there was a few moments where I'd be like, "Wait, have I missed something?" kind of thing.
Yep, same.
But then I think the ferry scene at the end and the final shot of her, like somehow it stuck with me. It was the Michael by the lakeside in The Godfather 2.
Well, it does carry that significance, because it almost feels like the whole film is almost setting up a relatively arbitrary, airy screenshot to finish on, because it replicates the ad. Yeah. Wikipedia words it like the Wikipedia plot synopsis.
The final image replicates the iconic ad poster of Valentine, but with this time showing real emotion on her face.
Which is, Wikipedia words it like that's the point. Like, now she's really experiencing the emotion.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I read Valentine's story as being one of someone who can't feign real emotion. But that...
Yeah, it's not like, it's not so much, the film isn't about...
Yeah.
Whether you're actually feeling things or not.
It's about fraternity. It's about brotherhood, is the other word I'd use to describe fraternity. And sort of, and maybe that's all just in that ending. Well, there's brotherhood between Dominique and Kern, the judge, because they start out as, she's like, this is disgusting that you're eavesdropping, and then becomes like quite a good friend. And it
becomes like, oh, this is quite hot that you're eavesdropping.
Yeah, so I agree. I think... this is the best one by all accounts. You know, this is the one that was nominated for Oscars. This is the one that got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I can see that from like a haughty-taughty film perspective, it being the favorite because it's the least clear, and that's what's so good about it, is that it has that interpretation to it.
Yeah.
But I hazard to say, at least at this stage, having only watched them once, that it's maybe my least favorite of the three, just because I want to sit with them more, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know, like, it feels weird. I would say Blur is probably my favorite.
Yeah, same.
But even that feels weird. And it's like, these are films that, like, if I'd grown up with them, it would be like, oh, God, ask me on any given day. I'll tell you a different one's my favorite one, Like,
except White. It's never White.
Even there, it's like, sometimes you're in the mood for that. But yeah, like they do genuinely feel like these movies that, like, are super consistent. I mean, the fact they all came out within 18 months of each other probably helped.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's like, it's a super consistent franchise. And to say that I feel like I could say that Blue, might not be the best, but it's probably my favorite. But then to say that one is my least favorite feels disingenuous, or that one is the worst one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very strange franchise like that. It was strange for this podcast because even something like The Godfather, which we talk about like 1 and 2 like this, there's a very clear worst one.
Yeah.
But it's like essentially this franchise is what would happen if The Godfather 3 was as good as 1 and 2.
That's a good way to put it. I've got some dumb IMDb trivia here for you. Citing that it does not meet enough of the necessary guidelines concerning a film's artistic control within a foreign co-production, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences disqualified the film for competing in Switzerland's official entry for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. In an unprecedented move, Switzerland rejected the Academy's offer to submit another film. Miramax Films co-chairman Harvey Weinstein persuaded more than 60 industry heavyweights to sign a letter of complaint urging the Academy to reconsider its stance, to no avail. And it's weird reading a story, I guess, where Harvey Weinstein is the David to the Goliath that is the Academy of Motion Arts, Picture Arts and Sciences. So I just thought that was a funny pre-you-know-what mention of Harvey Weinstein being like objectively the good guy in a situation.
Yeah. Well, broken clock.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if I saw this on IMDb. I saw it all over the place when researching this film. One of my favorite things I've seen that Kieslowski would say about this film was essentially, the colors and the thematic readings that are all pretty arbitrary. Is like it's the French flag because France funded the film, and he basically said that if Germany funded these films and it was they were named after the colors on the German flag, what
would those colors be?
I want to say green.
I believe it's a red, yellow, and black.
You type in German flag and it doesn't even have just a picture of it. You have to click on images.
Yeah, it's black, red, and yellow.
Right, so if it was 3 colors black,
gold,
3 colors red, 3 colors gold, he's essentially saying you wouldn't the plots would be the same. There'd be no difference.
Yeah, right.
Which is interesting because I can understand being very liberal with how you interpret. We saw that with equality.
Yeah.
But I would have thought that would have been what kicked off the formulation of these ideas. That's how I'd use them anyway, and we will use them, and he has also used them in a different thing that we'll talk about later on. But the only thing that really connects these films outside of themes and ideas and the fact that they're phrased as a trilogy in their titles and the characters showing up in each film is that there is a elderly person in each film you see recycling a bottle in this big bottle recycler thing that we don't have in New Zealand, so I don't know what it's called. But yeah, in Blue you see an old woman trying to recycle, and you see an old man in white, and you see another old woman in red, all trying to put a bottle in this container. And supposedly these are supposed to be the heart of what each film is about, because in Blue, Julie doesn't notice the old lady, and this is supposed to represent freedom. Apparently, these are not my interpretations. And in White, Carol does not help the man, but he looks at him with like a grin, and there's almost a relation between the two in the spirit of equality. And in Red, Valentine actually helps the old lady in the spirit of fraternity.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I like that.
So that's a cool way to kind of look at what each of them are. Let's talk, Richard, about Continue the Franchise, where we continue the franchise. Yeah, man. So,
I do want to now interrupt and say, for some poorly placed, useless statistics.
Very good.
Because it didn't feel like they were coming. But this is, if you count Godzilla as one franchise, this is our first franchise entirely in a language other than English.
Yeah, nice work.
But I mean, like, yeah, if you just go off like Heisei era, Showa era, those are all. But yeah,
nice. So Red was Krzysztof Kieslowski's final film as he retired afterwards, and then he actually died 2 years later in 1996, quite suddenly, apparently, at the age of 53, I think I said before. So while there are obviously no sequels, there is a structurally similar project which precedes Three Colors that he did called The Decalogue. Have you heard of this?
Just from like being on Kieslowski's Wikipedia page and saying he's known for Decalogue.
Yeah, so the Decalogue was an anthology TV series of 10 one-hour films based on the 10 Commandments.
That's cool.
Which I really like and would really like to check
actually,
it out.
I have heard of this. I think someone's mentioned it in our Discord.
Right. So I really like the idea of basing your theme off like a series of themes for a series of different stories off something, like each film is based on one of the seven deadly sins or something like that. Like, I'm real into that. And so for Continue the Franchise this week, Richard, I thought you and I could maybe workshop the same idea together because it felt inevitable that we'd land on something very similar, if not the same thing. Right. And so what I want us to pitch, Richard, is the Red Peak trilogy. Now,
Can I also do my Continue the Franchise after that?
Okay, sure. So the Red Peak was one of the proposed flags for the New Zealand flag change that happened years and years ago now, 1,000 years ago now in 2016, 2015. And essentially, to cut a long story short, the Prime Minister wanted to change the flag. He put up 4 alternatives that all sucked and weren't.
Okay, well, I'll explain the story. So the Prime Minister, John Key, said, look, we're going to hold a referendum to change the flag. So they took in this, essentially a massive amount of submissions. And then they made an official long list of 40 alternative flag designs, which you can look online. Some of them are quite good, some of them are quite interesting. And then they chose 4 options. So John Key's big thing was that he thinks that New Zealand should have a thing like Canada has the maple leaf, we should have the silver fern, which is like our thing on our flag. It's like our symbol. And he said, when Canadian soldiers die, they put the maple leaf on their tomb, and he seemingly he was unaware. Well, no, like New Zealand soldiers have the silver fern on their tombstones, and then these things came out, the 4 selections, and they were ostensibly the same thing. There was 2 that were identical with slightly different colors, and then one was just a black and white thing, and then that one was something else. But the country banded together and with this Red Peak flag, which is it's like a white upside down V shape, which has divides the flag into 3 segments. One is blue, one is black, one is red, and then the V itself is white. It's a beautiful flag. It looks like a mountain.
I love it.
And the country, especially people around our age, like banded behind this flag,
and part of it was because it was so great. It was truly the only good one. The other ones look like
and it looks like a flag. It's got a New Zealand spin on it. It means something, which you'll go into in a moment. Yeah. And it's like it can fly either way. It can flap about in the wind. It's symmetrical. A little kid can draw it. It looks great when it's like shrunk down. When you shrink down our flag, you can't tell it from Australia's. But then John Key was like, he said, I don't like the flag, but, we would have to change the law. We'd have to have a majority vote in Parliament to add that in to the referendum. And then all the other parties were like, well, fuck, we'd support it. And then, so eventually it got added to the referendum. And then, so there was this moment where, the New Zealand people had spoken, and we now got to vote on this flag. Because, might I add, they didn't have a single vexillologist, which is an expert in flags, on the committee.
It drives me insane, man.
To choose that. Imagine your country was writing a new national anthem, and they didn't involve a single songwriter in the entire thing, a single musician in the entire process.
It was such a John Key thing to do.
He wanted this to be his legacy, essentially.
And it's this old corporate boomer who got a bunch of corporate logos as flags and was like, pick one. And then everyone's like, can we have this one that evokes kind of like the spirit of old New Zealand and the heart of the country. And he said he just didn't want to do it.
And then one of the flags he liked, it was essentially our current flag, but instead of the Union Jack, it was the silver fern. That's very simplifying it, but it's similar to that. But then, which then lost to our current flag in the second referendum, and then, we still have the same flag. But I still love the idea that had Red Peak won that initial referendum, the country would have forced the Prime Minister into a situation where he went from being the only person in the country who thought it was important to change the flag to then get a referendum that he either has to vote for a flag he's admitted he doesn't like or vote to keep the flag.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, that would be and imagine if New Zealand's flag had this story behind it of the people banding together and putting this on the referendum because that's the one they care about.
Yeah. And so Red Peak has kind of become an unofficial symbol for renegade New Zealand now, I guess, although it has faded from the limelight in recent years. But I thought it would be cool to essentially do what Kieslowski did with the Three Colours trilogy and make the Red Peak trilogy. There are 4 colours on the Red Peak flag. I'm not including white because it's you'll see in a minute. So the Wikipedia design section for Red Peak says, the design, a simplified reference to the geometric elements of the Taniko pattern as well as to the star tips of the current flag, represents the uniqueness of New Zealand's land, light and position. The white chevron refers to the collision of 2 tectonic plates that formed the Southern Alps, while the coloured triangles symbolise the red earth, black night and blue dawn, a reference to the rangi and papa creation story in native Māori mythology. In this way, the flag also notes New Zealand's prominence as one of the first countries to hold the light of a new day. Fuck, it's so good. It's so beautiful. So essentially it's a flag which says, we are the first to get the new day. Here is some of our legends, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's also called First to the Light.
First to the Light is an alternate name for it. So the films that I would call them, I've actually only written titles because I thought we could workshop it, but I don't know.
Okay.
I thought, so based on that Wikipedia article and what is the official, these are the design principles by the creator, I was thinking the films would be called Red Peak, Red Earth, Red Peak, Black Night, and Red Peak, Blue Dawn. Right? And so Red Earth, Black Night, Blue Dawn. I guess they would each, maybe they would go into the rangi and papa creation stories actually tell
Māori mythology, because those are some really interesting stories.
And maybe they could be contemporary set versions of those
fables.
Stories. Yeah. And so this is something I would legitimately kind of want to pursue as a film project. Yeah. So welcome to a very earnest edition of Continue the Franchise, where it's like, let's make a Red Peak series of films.
Yeah, I love it.
Anyway, what's your Continue the Franchise?
Okay, my Continue the Franchise is called, it's a trilogy of 3 films, which are 3 Colours Blue, 3 Colours White, and 3 Colours Red. However, I'm going to swap the first and last ones. So you've got 3 colours, red, white, and blue.
Oh.
And I did a little research into like American. If you search like American ideals, so this is an American remake essentially.
Truth.
If you look
justice.
up the American ideals, it's democracy, rights, liberty, opportunity, and equality. That's obviously more than 3. What I've decided to go with is 3 colors: red, white, and blue. Each film would cover. The first one would cover truth. Second one would cover justice, and the third one would cover the American way, which is the catchphrase of Superman.
Yeah.
So the idea I had for truth is, so you have like, it could essentially be, I had an idea that it could be like a story along the lines of Bombshell, that it's about, a young journalist going to work in mainstream media, something like Fox News. One of these more kind of, or maybe even like a more with like an InfoWars type thing.
Right.
And not realizing kind of how far down the rabbit hole they are, or even if it's just someone who's just blindly supporting one of these ideas like QAnon and doesn't kind of understand. And then it would be the story about how, the oversaturation of fake news in America now, like you can't distinguish the truth anymore.
Yeah.
And it's someone falling victim to that. It would be this story of, it would be this downhill slope of someone who graduates from some kind of broadcasting school, journalism school, and is forced into one of these jobs where they're having to peddle lies.
Can they also can this also be reflected in their personal relationships?
Probably.
See, how good are films when you base them on a single ideal, eh? And
Yeah.
this is really, really good. Nice, man. That's really good.
Okay, and then 3 colors white, which deals with justice, would be about it'd be about a good cop.
Mm-hmm.
So cops have obviously gotten a bad rap in the last year.
The last year,
but this is about one of the good ones, one of those few good apples that we're so constantly told about. It's someone who wants to really make a difference in their local police force, and then one day they see a George Floyd type incident,
mm-hmm.
a life-changing incident done by their fellow officers. Our main character goes through all of the right avenues to find justice.
Yeah.
And the police department sweeps it under the rug, as it always happens, because that's what justice looks like in America, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's protecting themselves, everyone covering their own ass. It's essentially the story of Christopher Dorner, who Dave Chappelle talked about in his special 846, which is about George Floyd. That was like this guy who he used to be a Marine, and then he did everything right. He tried to call out the bad cops, and then he ended up going on a shooting spree, essentially shooting fellow officers. And it was this big manhunt because he was this black officer. And everyone was like, there was this whole race thing around it. But yeah, tell the story of, what justice looks like. Everyone goes, there's only a few good, there are good cops. It's like, but this is what happens to them.
Yeah.
When a good person tries to become a cop, this is what the system does to them.
Yeah.
So that's 3 colors white justice. 3 colors white justice.
Could the oh jeez, was that intentional?
It was unintentional.
Could these themes of justice or injustice also be reflected in the main character's personal life?
Yes.
Excellent. Cool. What? Tell me 3 colors. Was the last one?
Blue. 3 colors blue, the American way. This would tell the story of an immigrant mother who with her young children, who is trying to find sanctuary in the United States. And I mean, if you look into any of this shit, they would get trapped at the border by ICE. They are fleeing their home country because it is legitimately unsafe for them, and the US government goes, well, shouldn't have shouldn't have been born in a shithole country, to use the President of the United States words. It's this woman who would eventually die, waiting to be led into America, to pursue her own American dream of just wanting to give her kids a good life, and escape whatever hellscape is going on in her home country. Because that's the American way.
And it should also, the reason her country is a hellscape, it should be because of American intervention as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, these would be three very depressing movies.
One question about the last one.
Yeah.
Could these themes of the American way be reflected in the main character's personal life?
No.
Okay.
No.
Damn. Okay. Fair enough. You're the director. Okay.
But yeah, like these would be three very harsh kind of looks at reality. They would all have very depressing endings. And
yeah. I like that. That's really interesting because the French Polish version of this, the real one that actually exists, they all have oddly hopeful endings. All three of them.
Yeah.
The maybe Red is a little bit darker, but they still live. They all live at the end of 3.
For sure.
At the end of Red. And this is like when the three-color trilogy looks at the French ideals, they're taking them seriously, whereas you've looked at the American ideals and done a Black Mirror distorted reflection of it. It's very cynical.
Yeah, well, they're a fucking joke at the moment, aren't they?
No, I love it, man. I love it. Really good stuff.
Thank you. So when you were like, I'm going to not let you do a continued franchise, I was like, I've actually thought about it this time.
Oh, wow, okay.
But did you have in your notes as well, the really interesting, I've just found this out, that Kieslowski, so you mentioned the Decalogue thing, but there's actually another similar project to the Three Colors trilogy. At the time of his death, he was working with the writer of these films, Piesowitz.
Yep.
Not sure how to say that. On a second trilogy, which would have been called Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory.
I like that.
And so they wrote these scripts, and then in 2002, 2005, and 2007, these three films actually were made by different directors.
Oh.
So there's Heaven by Tom Twyker, Hell or L'Enfer by Denis Tanovic, and Hope by Stanislaw Mucha. So these are all three films that were, made by different directors. I don't know if they try and have any kind of connection other than they were all just adapted from these scripts that were intended to go together. But yeah, interesting thing.
That is very interesting. I'm sorry, I should have caught that in my notes. I'm glad you did. All right, let's, Richard, rank that franchise. So this is we have all our franchises listed on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com /ColePopsha, I think. That's an assumption. Go to our list.
Yeah, you say this every week. We go, I don't know if that's it.
And we have a list called FFF Ranking, which is where we list all of the 118 currently franchises we've covered. And fun fact, Three Colors Blue is the 500th film, arguably, that we've watched for film franchise Fortnights, so that's pretty cool. Have you got it open?
I do.
All right. Do you want to rank it, or do you want me to do it?
You can rank. You can do the actual ranking.
Okay.
If you like, but, well.
Sweet. So this would be quite high.
Yeah. Do you have a so?
We're going to explain the whole thing again.
The nymphomaniac.
Well, I think it's going to be above the nymphomaniac.
I think that's irrelevant today. Okay, so I think you and I can both agree this is quite high. Would we both agree that it would be top 10? And then I'll run through what our top 10 are.
Is it better than Shrek? Yes, it's better than Shrek.
Okay, so our top 10 are currently in this 1 to 10. Toy Story, The Godfather, Back to the Future, Mission Impossible, Scream, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Raimi Trilogy, Lord of the Rings, The Terminator, and Shrek. Now, where are you thinking?
Jesus, man, it might be pretty high up.
Because do you know what? Do you want me to throw out where I think?
Where?
Or what I'm kind of thinking? If this was 1, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with it.
Right, yeah. I don't know if it's as personally triumphant to me as Toy Story.
Toy Story, yeah.
I would happily put it above The Godfather or Back to the Future. I don't think I could do Toy Story.
Because it's so consistent.
Yeah,
and it's like these are like. For our podcast, anyway, these are like the godfathers of foreign films we've covered so far.
I reckon put it above Back to the Future. Or does the fact that it's pretty Godfather quality films, but they actually got 3 for 3, bump it above The Godfather?
I think it can, yeah.
I guess I like Godfather more than I like any of the Three Colors films, though.
Yeah. But I do, yeah. Also, yeah, like, I mean, it'd be cool. Yeah, a cool top 3 is Toy Story and then Godfather and Red, White, and Blue.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to look like cool, filmy, arty boys after this.
Well, that's actually exactly what I'm thinking, Richard, is like, it feels like the book of every franchise that we're writing is like a step closer to being comprehensive now that we've got 3 colors in the top 3. So, yeah, are you happy at 3, or do you want to go 2? Culturally, I feel like The Godfather, at least in our world, has impacted so much
in
more.
our world, you mean just the world outside of France and Poland?
Exactly, yeah. But it's not like The Godfather is like especially local either. Like it's the Godfather's Italian, you know, so it's essentially from the same regions. I think 3. I think it is a better score for consistency than The Godfather, but at the very least, The Godfather Part 1 is better.
Is the greatest film of all time.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. What do you think?
I can put it at 3.
All right. There we go. It is shit. 3 colors and number 3. Very nice. Awesome. We're so classy, and this podcast now belongs in the Criterion collection, I think, now that we have 3 colors up in there. Cool. All right. Well, Richard, what this leaves us with is our next franchise for the year. I say for the year because we're coming up to the end of the year now, and the end of Film Franchise Fortnights for 2020. And Richard, we thought we would have 2 franchises left, and then we kind of had another thought, and I'll explain that in a second, because we're not doing franchise roulette, we're doing our Patreon voted. So over at patreon.com/cultpopture, you get to vote for every second franchise a month that we do. So that's one franchise, every second franchise we do, so it's 1 franchise a month you get to tell us what to watch. And this month, the winning vote, based on the moot that maybe it should be vaguely Christmassy, there was the mission statement was that maybe because it's Christmas time we do a Christmas.
Not stated by us in any way.
No, that's true. It's sort of just a happy coincidence. The voted on franchise was the Muppets movies. The movies in the Muppets media franchise, which consists of a lot more than movies. Obviously, we'll just be covering the movies. But that also called into question a larger thing, which was how many Muppet movies are there? Because there are definitively 8 theatrical Muppet movies. But then you look at straight to DVD, TV movies, you'll find a few more. And it didn't seem right for our podcast to not... We're definitely covering them. It was a question of when and how and what the go is. So we've decided, Richard, off pod, that the last 2 Film Franchise Fortnights episodes for 2020 will be the Muppets straight to DVD/TV movies, followed a fortnight later by the Muppets theatrical releases. And so by my count, and I did researched this. I looked at the duration of the various Muppets TV specials and straight to DVD movies, and by my count, there are 5 Muppets movies that exist under that banner, which include...
Just to clarify, what's the reasoning for doing them in that order?
Because you're really busy this week, so I thought saving the later films for later down the track would... And also, I want to end the year watching, like, Muppets Most Wanted, you know? Like a film that's probably going to be better than the final of these ones.
All right.
So, the 5 films we're doing are Muppet Classic Theatre, Kermit's Swamp Years, It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, The Muppets Wizards of Oz, which should just be The Muppets of Oz. We'll get to that. And finally, A Muppets Christmas, Letters to Santa. So 2 Christmas specials in this lot. So we'll be watching them over the next fortnight if you want to watch along with us, followed by the 8 theatrical Muppet movies the following fortnight. In between Netflixmas 2020, ring the sleigh bells, Richard. The season is upon us for Netflix to crank out a bunch of almost always shit Christmas movies, unless one of them is like a modern masterpiece, which I don't think has happened this year, sadly.
We were spoiled last year. That's never going to happen
It's never going to happen again. Referring, of course, to Klaus. And that is the end of the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please, and you've never heard the show, maybe consider supporting us on all the different platforms. We're on all the different social medias: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/cultpopture, and join the Cult Popture Discord, where you can chat to us every day about how 3 Colours doesn't count as a franchise, or how a Muppets Christmas Letters to Santa is listed as a TV special, and it's like, yeah, but it's 80 minutes long. And yes, I know there's a Lady Gaga one that's 90 minutes long, but that seemed to me more like a TV, like a concert. It's a concert. It's a filmed concert. It's not a movie. Fight me on the Discord, which you can find a link to.
Or
in the show
you can just say on the Discord, just do the theatrical ones, and then maybe we'll just do that next week. And then that'll be it. And we'll do another franchise.
Or you can go on there and be like, hey, AJ, Richard, loved you. Continue the franchise ideas. I want to invest. I want to make these films. I am a producer with billions of dollars. Let's make this film.
Yeah. Quid pro quo, I am in jail and I do possibly have COVID-19, but you should see what I did for 3 Colours Red.
All right, welcome to the post-credits scene. This is a segment at the end of each episode after the...
A very silly segment.
Quote-unquote credits roll, where you can give us something to talk about for a couple of minutes.
I hope that people imagine credits during the bomb chicka bomb.
Yeah. I hope so. Anyway, you can do this yourself, actually, Richard, if you wanted to give us a post-credit scene. All you'd have to do is go to www.patreon.com/cultpopture, donate $5.
Would I not be exempt by being a creator?
No, absolutely not. Donate $5 or more a month, and you get a turn at giving us something to talk about. And this question comes to us from Luke. Do you want to read it to us?
Another Patreon question for you, lads. If you were to wake up one morning and seemingly everyone on Earth besides you disappeared, how would you spend your time? A few caveats. You can't die from suicide. You know you will live for 100 years after the disappearing. And while you're not sure if you're the only person, everyone locally disappeared and you do not immediately find signs of life online.
When I was a little kid, I actually regularly fantasized about this.
When I was a 27-year-old man, I regularly fantasize about this.
And the one thing I knew I would do would be go to my local Video Easy, which was our New Zealand's Blockbuster, and finally get into that tantalizing adults-only section and watch a bunch of porn. That is literally my answer to the question. I have no follow-up answers. What is your answer?
Okay, so the thing is, like, you've probably only got power for a limited time.
Yeah, that's true.
You would need to stock up on as much preserved goods as you can. You would need to find some kind of way to hunt. Not even just not even to feast, but for self-defense. Because in the coming 100 years that you're stuck here, you would need to fend for yourself. Everything's going to become overgrown.
Yeah.
The wild animals are going to be running everywhere. yeah, like essentially the first thing, I mean, you know, after I've mourned the loss of everyone I know and love, I would
Your buddy AJ?
Yeah. I mean, I would probably yeah, travel, because I mean also gasoline's only good for a few years as well if it's just lying there stagnant. So it's not like you'd be able to you know, I would get in a car and I would drive as far as I could kind of thing. And I would probably plan out some kind of base somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where just yet. But you know, you would drive for as long as you could to see if you can find any signs of life. You'd stock up on any kind of first aid supplies you can as well. Like yeah, my car would just be fucking loaded with like tins of spaghetti and paracetamol. Switching from car to car probably when I run out of gas. And I would find some kind of dog that I would, because only the humans are gone seemingly. I would befriend some kind of animal as well. It could be my noble steed or like my companion. And yeah, I guess you would just kind of wander aimlessly for the rest of the time. I mean, you could probably work out how long you would have power for, but yeah, there's a lot of things you'd probably want to research while you still have the internet that you might need to know. I mean, I guess there's still libraries and whatnot.
Well, Richard, have fun with your cross-country post-apocalyptic adventure. I'm watching porn.
Well, I would come find the porn. I would break into a lot of houses as well, I imagine.
Yeah. Look for porn.
Just to shake up the place. In case people come back, they'll be like, no.
My porn!